Hi, I'm James Cole and welcome to my Halloween video. I thought I'd do something a little different and tell you a scary story. But unlike the stories that I tell in the meditations I create, this is a true story about the time I came face to face with a real demon of pure evil and somehow survived to tell the tale. It all began way back in my early 20s, and I was living with my parents on the family property. They had an acre of land just outside of regular suburbia. It wasn't quite country, but it wasn't in the main slug of things either. A happy middle ground. The house sat in the middle of rustic gardens, surrounded by plants and trees, and was a perfect sanctuary for birds and other wildlife. One of the more common residents were bush-tailed possums. They're cute critters with big fluffy tails. But it was the same fluff that made them cute, that also disguised the vicious claws that would rip you apart if you got too close. In spite of that, being the animal lover that I am, I'd often cut up fruit and give to them, and after a while, one possum in particular would take the apple slices right out of my hand and allow me to pat him while he ate. So I named him Arnold. And a year or so later, Arnold had a baby clinging onto his back, proving that Arnold probably wasn't the best name for her. But by then it had stuck, so Arnold it was. Anyway, Arnold was just one of the many possums on the property. And as cute as they are, when they felt threatened by something, the whole neighbourhood would know about it. And if you've ever been to an area with possums, you'll know the distinctive sound they make. It's this gut-churning, gravelly, hiss, raw, scream kind of thing. And they never do it just once either. And sometimes this would go on for hours. I recall the first time I heard it, not long after moving to Australia, and thinking, what the hell is this noise? It sounded so demonic. And just like the dumb 13-year-old kid from a bad horror movie, I ventured out into the night with a torch which was clearly on its last legs of power, just to investigate this seemingly demonic infestation we had. As I crept into the darkness, in the wee hours of the morning, I froze with deathly chills down my spine, as the hiss-rattle thing roared above me. Quick with the torch, I looked up to see two glistening silver eyes staring down at me. My heart jumped before I had the chance to take in the rest of what I saw. On the branch above me sat this cute, fluffy, and somewhat scared little possum. I couldn't believe that horrifying sound came from such a tiny fluff ball of a critter. So I watched him for a while, and then made my way back to the house, happy that there were no demons lurking in the shadows of darkness. Or so I thought. And over the next few years, I got used to the sound, as irritating as it was, and it just became part of living in an area of trees and bushes in Australia. But that's not the story that I want to tell you. Now that I was in my 20s, I was heading down a dark path, rebelling against society, which I hated. Even my meditation, which I'd learned at high school when I was 16, had taken a dark turn. I was experimenting with altered states of consciousness and going on very different meditative journeys. I even experimented with visualizing my own death to see if I could glimpse behind the curtain of reality. And it worked. While in deep, deep meditation, I was exploring those places between lives, and it was nothing like the movies show it. It was neither dark nor light. but a void of all things. A waiting room without the waiting, or the room. An eternal nothing. I even slipped back to experience past lives that were generations apart, and some not even of this earth. I revelled in the process, and I used it without any prior knowledge, respect, or discipline for what I was doing. It was a frontier, and I was the explorer. And of course, with this chaotic approach to exploring realms beyond comprehension, it inevitably turned on me. When I was least expecting it, the darkness of the universe paid me a personal visit for trespassing in places I did not belong. My bedroom was at the rear of the house, with my bed in the middle of the room. A large window was to my left. Directly outside was a barbecue and entertaining area. And just to the side of that was a massive pine tree. And almost every night, the symphony of possum screams would start. On this particular night, I turned the television up that was mounted on the wall directly in front of me, in a feeble attempt to drown out the sound. But it wasn't long before I felt the onset of sleep taking hold, and I turned the TV off, allowing the room to fall dark so I could drift off to sleep. Again, I heard the cry of the possum. It was so irritating, but I knew I'd eventually be able to sleep through it. I lay there in the darkness, frustrated and trying to mentally block the sound from my ears. Suddenly, and without warning, a realization descended upon me. A chill ran through my whole body. Every hair stood up on end. The sound wasn't coming from the left where the window was. It was coming from my right. How the hell did a possum get in my bedroom? In spite of their cute fluffiness, I knew how dangerous these little critters could be when frightened. I carefully reached out to the bedside cabinet to the left of the bed and retrieved the television remote. I pressed the power button, expecting it to come on and illuminate the room. Nothing. I pressed it again and again. Nothing. I flicked the back off and rolled the batteries around, replaced it and pressed the power button once more. Still nothing. You've got to be kidding. I looked at the digital clock to my side. It was black. Of all the times to have a power cut, the only thing left for me to do was get out of the bed, make my way to the door at the far end, so I could fumble my way through to the kitchen where I knew that there was a torch. If only this happened today, when we all have torches in our phones next to our beds, right? I carefully pulled back the sheets and sat up on the side of the bed. The last thing that I wanted was to accidentally step on the possum and have it tear my legs apart. The sound was different to the regular possum sounds. It must have been so scared and looking for a way out. It sent shivers down my spine every time I heard it. Slowly, I stood up and turned my back to where I thought the possum was, and carefully took a step toward the door. From behind, two hands clasped tightly around my ankles. My brain was wired, filled with terror. This was no possum. It was a person who must have been laying down, waiting for me. Who was it? How did they break in? What did they want? Were they going to kill me? Adrenaline surged through my veins, and every sense lit up on extreme alert. I kicked backwards to break free from the grasp, but it just got tighter. I tried to lunge forward, and that's when the real terror sank in. Two more hands wrapped around me, one around my chest and the other around my throat. And I could instantly feel the full weight of whatever this was on my back. And I will never, ever forget the sensation of that cold, icy breath down my neck. With no time to analyze, I thrashed around, slamming this thing over and over into the wall, trying to break free. As I fought this creature, its icy cold breath intensified on the back of my head. The most blood-curdling sound roared in my ear. What the hell was it to have 4 arms and hands and no legs? I thrashed my way to the door and managed to get it open. I knew I had to make it down the hallway to my parents' room, where hopefully my dad would be awake and be able to help me. Slamming to the left and then to the right, I slowly edged and pulled my way down the hallway to the room, this creature thrashing around and clawing at me with the hand that was around my throat, while the other 3 ever increased their crushing grip. After what seemed like an eternal battle, I burst through the door to find my parents fast asleep. How? How could they still be asleep with all the commotion that was going on? I screamed out to them to wake up. Dad! Dad, help! Nothing. I slammed this thing as hard as I could into the chest of drawers and noticed that even with the full force of the strike, none of the ornaments that were sitting on top moved. And that's when I realized the one thing that would save my life. I was not in this reality. I was in that realm between lives, the other world. And this creature was a demon that had come from the depths of darkness to punish me. With that knowing, that realization inside, I knew that I was in the position of power. The fear left me. I stopped fighting and summoned the universal energy of light into my soul. And with the power of worlds behind me, I flung this creature over my shoulder to the far corner of the room. Before me was a hideous, demonic form, gnarly and grotesque, its skin grey, dry and crumbling, its features distorted with hate and rage. And never, ever in my life have I witnessed such fear as that which was strewn across the face of this thing that was now cowering at the realization of my power. My body charged with the energies of light. I felt them surging around me. Tiny blue sparks rippled over my skin, and I thrust my hands forward, and the power of suns leapt from them towards the demon. In an instant, the creature that had filled me with terror moments before was nothing more than a waft of foul-smelling mist that dissipated into the nothingness from where it came. I looked over at my parents as they slept soundly, unknowing of the battle that had taken place just outside of their reality. Knowing I was existing outside of my own body, I ran out of their room, back down the hallway, and came to a sudden stop as I burst into my room. There, laying on the bed, in a sleep-like state, was my body. And it was the strangest sensation to be fully conscious and aware, yet looking down upon myself from the other side of the room. After a moment's contemplation, I jumped onto the bed and into my body, instantly sitting up straight and gasping for breath as I filled my lungs with air. I looked over at the clock. The blue-green numbers emanated their usual soft glow. I picked up the remote and pressed the power button. The whine of the old tube television sounded as the picture slowly lit up the room. I swung my legs out of the bed, double-checking nothing lay waiting for me. All clear. I stood and made my way to the door where the light switch was and turned it on. Light filled the room, making the back of my eyes ache as they adjusted from the dark. I opened the door and my heart stopped. There at the other end of the hallway was a figure standing in shadows. My breath stalled for an eternal moment. Then, click, the light turned on and I let out a sigh of relief to see my dad standing there. He looked just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yep," I nodded. He turned the light off and we both returned to our rooms. I lay back down in bed, exhausted from my encounter, and soon fell into a deep, deep sleep, with the lights still on and the TV glaring. This night, this experience, this moment, this was the first time I truly stepped into my power, and I was in awe of it. From this moment forward, my life would never be the same again. And it wasn't. Thanks for watching this video and listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments if you want more stories like this. I'll see you next time. Till then, have a beautiful day.